My name is David Goodstein, and I am Webinar Coordinator for the Outsourcing Institute, and it is our pleasure to be the co-host of today's event with Accelerance. Before we commence today's session, I would like to say a few brief words about the Outsourcing Institute in case you are not familiar with us. The Outsourcing Institute is a professional association dedicated to providing independent, best practice tools, roadshow events, and networking opportunities for all forms of outsourcing. Located at Outsourcing.com, we have 70,000 members globally. We specialize in providing low-cost and no-cost alternatives to outsourcing buyers in need of RFP tools, vendor selection assistance, training, as well as general support and coaching. For those of you who are in the market, this space we offer an array of very targeted sponsorship and promotional opportunities. Our sister company, CMS, provides recruiting services for those seeking to hire outsourced professionals experienced at buying, selling, managing, or consulting in this arena. Our contact information is at the bottom of the screen for those of you who have any questions. So without further ado, I will now turn it over to Steve Mizek, founder and CEO of Accelerance, to speak about rapid software outsourcing, finding the right global software development team right now.
Hey, thanks, David, and thanks to the Outsourcing Institute for inviting me, and welcome everybody. Hey, I wanted to share some ideas and thoughts with you out there, and I'd say in general this webinar, this recording is for those of you out there who are struggling with the challenge of hiring good programmers and good programming teams. And so we'll talk about a number of topics along the way, some of them listed here. And really the idea is to help you get started as quickly as possible with the right kind of software development team around the world. And then along the way, I'm going to be pointing to several information resources you can use. If you would like to do this yourself, we have several webinars on the Accelerance website. And then at the end, I'll tell you how to download the ebook version of Software Without Borders, a book that I wrote about the entire software outsourcing process. So you know, there's a lot of words being thrown around about outsourcing and offshoring and outtasking. Really, sometimes it just sort of seems to miss the point, because really you're out there struggling to try and find good programmers to create great software. The latest phrase now is outcome-based outsourcing, which we'll talk about in more details. But in general, oh my gosh, there's just too many O words, right? Sorry, Outsourcing Institute. So instead, I'd rather talk about or focus on global software development. And that's really the idea of getting a team of programmers to develop your software wherever they might happen to be. In the last 10, 15 years, many companies have been looking offshore or nearshore, outside of their country, in order to get some cost savings for this. So that still is kind of a strong motivator for this. In fact, you know, at least half or less than half of the salaries in the U.S. is what seems to still be in play for software development resources. And one reason is because finding programmers is just so difficult here in the States that the cost of hiring a programmer and paying him or her a salary is quite high. A few months ago, I saw this article about, with the provocative title, if Google's paying $250,000 salaries, why aren't more students, you know, majoring in computer science and learning how to program? And you know, I'm not sure what the exact answer is, but it does take a certain kind of skill, analytical capability, attention to detail, you know, all those great skills that we like to see in our programmers. But then in these days, too, it also takes some knowledge of the user experience and the thinking of the way a user thinks in order to create great software. So have we reached an apocalypse here, the hiring apocalypse? Recently there was a post on TechCrunch with this CEO allegedly at the train station in San Francisco begging for programmers. So I don't know if we've gotten this far, but certainly clients tell us it's very difficult to hire programmers these days, and outsourcing is a way to overcome that problem. So there's a couple different ways you can use these programmers. One is the dedicated team, and this of course would be a team of programmers in an offshore location, or even an onshore location. It's meant to extend the programming talent that you have in-house, if you have any, or it can be an entire team that's working completely independently on your software. Sometimes this is called time and materials or time and effort, because you're paying them month to month to work on the software. And of course, these people come to work every day, and they're just working on your software only. They're not working on multiple projects or anything like that. They're dedicated to working on what your software needs to do. Now, recently, there's the phrase outcome-based outsourcing has come into play, and this is a little bit different. I think there's two kinds of outcome-based outsourcing. One you know, probably very familiar with, and that's fixed bid. That's where you have a really tight budget. You want to control the spend. You want to make sure that you get your money's worth. The other kind, which is relatively new, is hiring an outsourcing company, a software development team, to participate in the revenue that your software will bring or the cost savings that it will bring to your company. Now, this, of course, takes a lot of deep knowledge by that software development team of your business, of your processes, in order to overcome any risk that there might be in doing this. But in both cases here, all cases of outcome-based outsourcing, the vendor is taking on quite a bit of risk in understanding what your software will do and what how they can increase the revenue or cost sharing potential of that software. So therefore, there's a higher cost for that. So with fixed bid, the big criticism of fixed bid is that it relies on the waterfall type of process, where you create a series of steps where you specify the software, then you develop it, then you test it to make sure it meets the specifications to begin with, and then it's delivered. And of course, to do all of that requires a pretty comprehensive specification. And it's almost like the specification is the thing being delivered rather than the software itself. You know, what companies have found, what studies have shown, is that, yeah, is anything missing? Why, yes, just the kitchen sink, because people are tempted to put in as many features as they possibly can when they're designing the software up front, because they feel like it's their last chance to define the functionality. In fact, they feel like it's the only chance. So they better throw in all the features they can think of at that time. And studies have shown that this really list of unused features that users of the software would never think of using, just drives up the cost and delays the schedule for getting the software completed. I recorded a video with one of our software development partners about this and about how Agile development process is a much better way than fixed bid. But Alejandro and I compare Agile and fixed bid. I think you'll find that interesting. It's on the Accelerance website. So in general, the feeling is Agile is better than Waterfall because you have these short iterations where, well, first of all, as you can see in the diagram, you have a backlog of features and functions that you want to be included in the entire software application or product. That's called the product backlog. And then for each sprint, which is between 1 and 4 weeks, you define just what's going to be implemented during that sprint, and that's called the sprint backlog. And then there's usually daily communication with you about what the development team is doing, what issues they're running into, and the end result is that the most valuable features are delivered at first. So you don't have to worry about that kitchen sink. If the kitchen sink is what you really need, then it'll show up in some of the early sprints because you will be determining along with the software development team that that's the most important thing. And along the way, you and the team will definitely learn about what's important and what's not, because you'll be showing the software to your users, to your potential customers if it's a product, and somehow, they just have a way of changing things, and the Agile process is well adapted to that to allow you to make those course corrections that you need as you go along from one sprint to another. So, however, we talked about fixed bid, and the whole idea was to get some sort of sense of control on this. Is Agile really writing a blank check for the software development team? Will you be able to get the desired outcome that you want? Because you don't want to just hire more programmers. You really want real innovation, right? You want this development team to come up with their own ideas and be able to contribute. However, if you really are looking for more financial control, then you have to ask yourself, can you create a complete spec? Can you do an outcome-based outsourcing engagement that will enable you to share revenue or savings? Do you know enough about your market, and is it really part of your business plan to allow someone the inside track on what it is and how it is you're making money? So that's the questions you have to ask yourself. And if you are in the situation of having to write a detailed specification, then again, we have a webinar about this, about one of our clients who, when he looked back on his career, discovered he'd accidentally become a programmer. He never really wanted to. And then he found that he really wasn't programming. He was really guiding the outsource team. And so Keith shares in the webinar the things that he learned along the way, and the best things to include in the specifications, the things the programmers really need and really will pay attention to. So I encourage you to check that out. I mean, sometimes fixed price makes perfect sense because you can take an existing software application where the functionality is well known and re-implement it in a new technology, perhaps making it a web app or something like that. So there are places where it does make sense. So going back to the dedicated team, how did that get such a bad rap? Because I think many companies felt that developing software, especially innovative software that was at the core of their business, was just something that they had to keep inside. So the old thinking of chief technical officers and CIOs was, we're not going to outsource this critical stuff. In fact, the only thing we feel comfortable outsourcing is the maintenance of software development. So therefore, we need a bunch of programmers to do that. It's kind of the crap work that no one here wants to do, so let's outsource that. So they turn to the purchasing department and they say, go get a bunch of programmers. And of course, what does purchasing do? They try to optimize by cost. Get us as many programmers as you possibly can at the cheapest possible price. And vendors reacted to this. They basically complied and said, well, if that's what you want, okay, we're going to get you as many bodies as we possibly can. We'll try to do our best to have them meet your requirements for skills and for experience, but it's really up to you to manage this process. But I'd say these days, and one of the reasons there's the interest in the outcome-based outsourcing is things have really changed because, like this quote that was recently in a Forrester report that touts this trend of outcome-based outsourcing, where the VP of Engineering says, I have hundreds of engineers working on software maintenance, but he or she felt that for innovation, I really need to find a different kind of vendor. And because the kinds of vendors that his purchasing department were finding clearly were not going to be able to get the job done the way he wanted to do it. So people like the VP of Engineering are looking for a better way. They know they can't do a fixed bid Agile development process, even though Agile development may be what they want. They can't fix bid innovation because it just don't work that way. And they want to remove the risk from time and materials or hiring a dedicated team because they know that's the only way you can really get an Agile team that will innovate and create a great software application for you. So your two main choices are the old sort of HR-led staff augmentation approach, where you set some hiring goals, you create job descriptions, and the main mission of purchasing is to go out and get cost savings. As we know, many vendors will recruit bodies and volunteer for that, and it's very profitable for them. But the second choice is what I would call true outsourcing, or really truly addressing the need for an Agile process where you're getting those useful features as quickly as possible, and you're generating quality code along the same at the same time, because Agile development processes are typically test-driven, and there's a lot of tests built into the whole process. The problem is only some vendors will really be able to recruit and also provide a team that has been trained in the software development processes and the methodologies, and also will provide metrics and monitor the software development process to make sure that it improves over time, because that's really what you want, is a software development process that will be lead to success and success more rapidly over time as well. So here's what I would describe as the 3 steps for finding a vendor, and these are described in great more detail in the book Software Without Borders, which I'll tell you how to get a copy of. So the 3 steps are source, screen, and then select. So of course sourcing is finding a large number of programmers, large number of companies that can provide programmers, and so the typical techniques for doing this are using the search engines. You may get overwhelmed with the number of choices, but hey, your goal at this step is just to simply create a large number of lists. More modern approaches is you could tweet, hey, anybody out there know a great software development team for Ruby on Rails or for .NET or for whatever, and you'll probably get lots of responses that way as well. There's always the referrals, asking your brother-in-law or friend or someone you used to work with who they've used. Of course, the weakness of that is, the team that they used may be good at .NET, and if you need Ruby on Rails, I mean, those are two radically different skills, so you have to be careful with that. And then everyone's favorite, cold calls. I don't know about you, but even I get day-to-day these calls from our friends in Asia that want to develop our software, and you could add them to your list if they meet your basic criteria. And criteria is the focus of the second step, which is screening. So what are the criteria you should use in order to screen down this now long list of software development vendors that you found? Well, clearly technical expertise is one of them, depending on the kind of software development language, framework, environment that you're targeting or expect to use. Certifications may be important for you. If you're into Agile, you may be looking for certified Scrum Masters on their team. If you're looking for continuous improvement for a long-term engagement, you may be looking for CMMI level 4 or 5 certification. And then, of course, there's the location and the impact that has on time zone or workday overlap with you, the affinity that you might have with that culture, and just preferences for country or countries to avoid, even for that matter, in making your selection and screening down the list of companies that you have found. And of course, last but not least is cost, which is also a factor. And what we've seen is there's a definite correlation between location and cost. So that's one of the certainly one of the factors to be considered, but in addition to all of these others. So where might you look geographically? These are the 5 areas of the world that we narrow it down to. There's, of course, India and Pakistan, which are still leaders, certainly have the great deal of mind share. China is coming up. We have some new partners in China that are really excellent, and the costs are very reasonable as well. There's other countries in Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Malaysia, Philippines is a little off to the edge on this map, but those are other destinations in Asia that you could consider. Then moving to the middle is Eastern Europe, the countries of Belarus, Ukraine, Romania, and Bulgaria, Hungary in Central Europe, Poland in Central Europe. So there are definitely a number of countries there that you want to look at where you get not only the great technical talent, but also some cost savings as well. And finally, on the left, so we move from right to left on the map here, is Latin America, including the countries of Central America and South America, which, of course, for us people looking to develop software in North America has pretty close time zone overlap. Most of the countries are in the Eastern, Central Eastern, or maybe the Atlantic time zones. So they're just a few hours off from our normal workday. So finally, after you've sourced a large number of vendors and you've screened them down to, we hope, just 2, 3, well, we say 3 to 5 at most, so you don't drive yourself crazy, then it's time to look at the 3 R's, as we call them, the resumes of the actual programmers that would be applied to your software development, be added to your team. The references with other clients would be important to check. And then, of course, rates and the other terms and conditions that you would want to negotiate with your software development company. This relationship is often governed by a Master Services Agreement, or MSA, and we would recommend that you have that reviewed with your attorney, or with certainly read it yourself. And we have a really great webinar with an attorney friend of ours that talks about some of the pointers and some of the things you'd want to have included in your MSA. And then another thing you should consider doing is an on-site visit. If this is a critical software development engagement for you, you might want to go and visit. We have another webinar on the website that talks about one of our clients that took a tour of many different companies and what he learned along the way, and which he shared with you. So we even have a checklist that you can download and use for that. So that's the general 3-step process, how you would do it yourself. It's documented well in Software Without Borders. What Accelerance has done, though, is give you a way to select a global team in just days. We have a very well-defined 7-step process that we guide you through, and there's a cool infographic on our website that describes this, and there's even an ebook you can download that goes into more detail. And so what we've done is actually implemented a step 0 before we get to the 7-step processes with you, where we've visited and assessed and looked at, evaluated hundreds of partners around the world, and have narrowed those down to the 25 or so. It varies from time to time, but about 25 to 30 of the best companies in the world for doing software development. So step 1 with you would be a free consultation, no obligation. Just kind of, give us a holler, give us a call, email us to set up a call with you to talk about your specific needs, and then we will quickly screen down our partners and help you select the best one. And that's a process that takes just days instead of the months of time it would probably take you to do it on your own. Again, if you would like to download Software Without Borders, that's on the Accelerance website. The entire book is there. Just sign up for it on the site. There's also hardcover available on Amazon if you prefer. And that's really it. I'd say thanks very much for joining us, and visit the website. There's lots of great pieces of information there on tips and guidelines about how you can outsource your software development and make effective use of software development teams around the world.